The Batman is probably the best superhero film I've seen in the last decade. I am admittedly not the biggest stan of superhero content, but I think in a world of constrained franchises and an ever-expanding array of cinematic universes, the Batman stands out not just because of its dark tone and visual style. I mean, it does look like someone picked the character up and dropped him into a David Fincher movie, but because of the freedom the filmmakers had with the sort of themes they were able to explore here. We're introduced to a Gotham overrun with corruption, a world created and owned by broken politicians and law enforcement profiting from the exploitation of drugs, prostitutes, and murder as the poor and disenfranchised are made to suffer or turn to a life of petty crime. And the Batman is not totally exempt from this moral corruption. His character is perfectly flawed in a way that creates for an incredibly engaging examination of the role he plays in this chaotic mess without abandoning the core tenets of his character. Matt Reeves was tasked with answering the question, who is Batman in the 2020s, and how does that reflect the world we're currently living in? A world where the rich and poor are further away from one another than they've ever been before, a world where the trust in police and politicians is at an all-time low, a world where those at the bottom are forced to face the repercussions inflicted upon them by those at the top. And I don't envy him at all. Well, maybe a little. Yeah, actually, let me direct a Batman movie. I think The Batman is the first film to really ground the character as having a role within the very establishment that perpetuates the type of brutality and corruption he is sworn to oppose. Many in the film, including the Riddler, view him as a type of criminal, and they present this idea within the film through the use of noir. You're all probably familiar with film noir, a genre of film defined by moral ambiguity and characters with dubious motives. In his book, More Than Night, Film Noir in its Context, James Nairmore writes that noir is viewed as something that strives to represent the point of view of criminals. They give us shady private eyes, crooked police, and the traditional gangster or petty criminal is replaced with angelic killers or neurotics. The Third Man is a prime example of early noir and considered to be one of the greatest films ever made, because most people haven't seen Garfield 2, where a writer called Holly Martins investigates the mysterious death of his friend Harry Lime, uncovering a web of crime and corruption, and is ultimately forced to examine how his own actions have rendered him complicit in the criminal activities of his aforementioned friend. These elements are all deeply embedded into the DNA of Matt Reeves's, hard to pronounce the possessive form of Matt Reeves, film The Batman. It is absolutely drenched in noir, reeks of the stuff. Not only does it share the striking visuals of characters and objects hidden within the shadows and framed by these distorted camera angles, but like The Third Man, it presents Batman as a character complicit in the very crime he strives to unravel. This idea is set up the very first time that we as an audience are introduced to the Batman. He's shown to be this oppressive and dangerous figure that poses a real threat to people, even those he's there to help.
Please don't hurt me.
Even the film's title, The Batman, creates a sense of distance between us and the character. He's more of an unreadable spectre than a person, a vague threat of violence, and the lack of context and familiarity allows us to truly see how the citizens of Gotham must view him. He's certainly no Spider-Man.
Go, Spidey, go!
Batman's first line in the film sets up the flaws he will be forced to address and the main theme of the film.
The hell are you supposed to be? I'm vengeance.
Revenge and violence. He personifies the anger and cruelty and unfairness of Gotham. We see petty, small-time criminals run scared, fearful of potential violence at the hands of Batman, while those in power, the ones responsible for the hellscape we've been introduced to, flaunt their disregard for the law, totally free from repercussion. And despite these common lawbreakers living in fear, this monologue establishes the idea that Batman's fists are aimed at the wrong people.
I wish I could say I'm making a difference. Murder, robberies, assault. 2 years later, they're all up.
It's very clear that this Batman is no ally to the police, but he also poses very little threat to the corruption happening under his nose. The true extent of the establishment's crimes, members of the force working at the Iceberg Lounge and being involved with the Penguin's drug network following the arrest of Maroni, for example, are only uncovered in the film when the safety of those at the top is threatened.
This is a crime scene. It's Mitchell, for Christ's sakes!
The elites and those serving the elites are all very familiar with one another. It feels personal to them, and Batman's investigation is acting in their interest. The very people responsible for the mess Gotham is in that we see at the start of the film. Now, we are shown and told that this is a very young incarnation of Batman. His hesitancy and panic when jumping from the top of the police headquarters, for example, demonstrates his lack of experience and that he is still scared and uneasy about certain elements usually taken for granted with the character. And I think this lack of development also applies to his worldview. It was not his primary focus to put an end to the corruption on display in this film. Falcone, the head honcho of the no-good crime network, is only caught and removed from the equation in Batman's pursuit of catching the Riddler. Batman brings him into the light only because he wants to catch this pesky serial killer. Uncovering and ending a large part of the corrupt establishment is a byproduct of Batman's main objective, and I think this is where the main conflict of the film comes into play. The Batman and the Riddler are very similar. The parallels between them are drawn at every available opportunity. This is represented visually and again established at the top of the film. The opening shot being from the Riddler's perspective and perhaps confusing the audience for a moment into thinking the child featured here is Bruce creates this sort of subconscious connection between the two characters. And this connection is cemented later in the film when we see the same POV shot utilized by Batman when also stalking an individual and potential targets. They also both seem to enjoy the game of cat and mouse they're playing with one another. The Riddler enjoys being lauded as a criminal mastermind, leaving behind puzzles, and the Batman enjoys being one of the few able to solve said puzzles. It's no surprise that the Riddler assumes they're one and the same. They're both vigilantes, they're both enacting their own form of vengeance on those they view as responsible for their trauma and declaring it as a form of moral justice. The Batman is punching down at the sector of society that he believes killed his parents, and as an audience we would assume that to be the common criminal. As Matt Reeves noted in an interview, what if some tragedy happened and this guy becomes so reclusive we don't know what he's doing? His drug is his addiction to this drive for revenge. He's like a Batman Kurt Cobain. The Riddler, on the other hand, is punching up, viewing the 1% as the source of his misery. And although the Riddler is clearly wrong for killing these people, and a lot of his beliefs and actions are clearly flawed, the film suggests that his analysis of who we should be pointing the finger at for Gotham's troubles is better placed than that of Batman. Batman even finds himself in agreement on occasion.
You make it sound like he had it coming. He was a cop.
The Riddler is able to create a series of events that expose the corrupt establishment in a way that the Batman never has, and in doing so exposes the Batman's own biases. As a result of the Riddler's actions, the Batman comes to the revelation that it was likely Falcone, a man firmly planted in the establishment, who may have actually murdered his parents, not the aforementioned street thugs. Now, this would seem to lay further groundwork to suggest that exercising his traumas are, in fact, the main motivation for his vigilantism. The seclusion that his wealth affords him to keep an arm's length from the rest of the world, and his family's own position in the elites of Gotham, has skewed the way that he views the world. This is something highlighted by Selina Kyle.
Means your choices have consequences.
Jesus Christ. Choices? You know, whoever the hell you are, you obviously grew up rich.
He's risking his life, but he's risking his life in a way that only someone who has all the resources could do. He was born with privilege. he is a descendant of royalty. In fact, for the majority of the film, Bruce Wayne is so detached from those genuinely being harmed by the corruption in Gotham that he is totally unaware of how harmful his own apathy to his family's legacy is. His father's foundation and unfulfilled pledge to help the people of Gotham out of poverty is a key reason for the Riddler's crime spree.
Living in some tower over the park isn't being an orphan. Looking down on everyone with all that money.
He is avenging this broken promise. And this general sentiment of anger and unease is also shared by the citizens of Gotham.
The Gotham Renewal Fund, our city safety net.
What good's a safety net? Didn't catch anybody.
Didn't help my daughter when she needed it. I can tell you that.
Now, Bruce Wayne could have helped to fulfill his late father's promise, but instead focuses on his second life as Batman, leaving little time or care for anything else related to the Wayne's legacy.
It won't be long before you've nothing left.
I don't care about that. Any of that.
You don't care about your family's legacy?
What I'm doing is my family's legacy.
You really could be doing more for this city. Your family has a history of philanthropy, but as far as I can tell, you're not doing anything.
Of course, you can view this as the character ironically being unaware of the fact that Bruce Wayne is Batman, but I think it also points to the fact that Batman by himself, and as he currently stands, is ineffective in helping to create a prosperous Gotham. And then, in the same breath, he's going out and striking fear into the same desperate people left without this aforementioned safety net. And I think it's a really smart and interesting move by the filmmakers to show how Bruce Wayne didn't even consider that he might be on the Riddler's hit list. We see he is more than happy to point out the flaws and contradictions in others, but seems unaware of his own pitfalls. I think the idea that everyone is flawed and no one's morals are above reproach in this film is best highlighted by the fact that nobody really wins here. Everyone kind of loses. The Riddler is devastated that his plan didn't end with him and Batman arm in arm as Gotham fell, and on the flip side, the Batman was unable to stop the Riddler's major terror attack by the end of the film. And of course, during the climax, the Batman realizes just how wrong his approach has been for the last few years.
Who the hell are you?
I'm vengeance.
The Riddler and his, I don't know, what are they, like 4chan friends? Justify their actions in the exact same way as the Batman, and for the first time he sees in action just how negative his effect has been on the city. The film ends with Batman deciding to abandon his flawed worldview and approach. He exchanges the brutality and violence and instead elects to inspire hope, demonstrated through this imagery of the flare as he leads people to safety. We see those trapped, first scared and wary of this threatening figure, acknowledge that he is there to help them. His humanity starts to bleed through this previously intimidating and ruthless persona. Batman's change in philosophy here is reflected by the breaking daylight, as he just simply lends a hand to those suffering in a caring and compassionate way. The shadows and darkness and distorted noir visuals melt away. For the first time, we see this character in complete clarity. There's no mystique, no ruling by fear. He's there to genuinely help people. And I think his final decision to remain in Gotham as Selina rides away is partly due to the responsibility he feels for the mess he had a part in creating. He acknowledges that the flood is going to inspire people to take advantage of the city's dire straits, and that he needs to be there to protect the people of Gotham in a way he hasn't done so before, but a protection that inspires this feeling of trust and hope. So they were my thoughts on The Batman. I enjoy the film a lot, think it's a good superhero film. What did you think? Did you like it? Did you not? Maybe let me know in the comments down below. Thank you to everyone who was subscribed recently. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in a bizzle. Bye, 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 bye.